Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and I am unfortunately going through the throes of a massive sinus infection that I picked up somewhere in the state of Indiana and brought home with me to Georgia. Beautiful, wonderful weekend on the banks of the Tippecanoe River, but left me with some sinus issues. That said, we have U.S. men's national team and a little bit of U.S. women's national team news to talk about. And to discuss these things with me is a man who is probably also very perturbed that Naomi Girma is not on the short list for the women's Ballon d'Or list. It is Thomas, aka US Keeper. Thomas, how are you this
Hey,
evening?
good, Bart. How are you? Yeah, I was a little surprised. I mean, she had some pretty big accolades at the Olympics. Lots of praise for her. So that's a significant omission on that for Naomi Girma.
Yeah, that is really the unfortunate came out today. The unfortunate news. We did have some U.S. women's national team players on that list. They include Trinity Rodman, Lindsey Horan. We also have Alyssa Nair and Mallory Swanson. Um, and Sophia Smith. Sorry. So 5 on the list. Alyssa Nair getting a nod, which is kind of nice, but no Naomi Gurman. That was weird. But the other 5, I mean, they seem fairly deserving when you look at a team that won a gold medal. You know, a number of players who contributed significantly not only to the international success, but even you look at like Lindsey Horan and Sophia Smith, who contributed to great success with their club teams. A good sign for the U.S. women that we are, in fact, still back.
Yeah, it's great to see. I mean, well deserving for sure. So it's again I think it's a good motivator for her. I mean, not that she really needs motivation, but it's always every once in a while someone gets snubbed, and sometimes it's good to see how they react. So I, you
Yeah.
know, we know what she has. So
We here at home understand completely. But that is news, obviously, that you will probably be hearing about more from the women's soccer community. Hopefully, we're talking about one of those 5 getting named the actual Ballon d'Or winner for the women's side. All right. Well, let's also discuss the fact that we have no coaching news, but kind of coaching news to talk about, and a 24-player roster to discuss. So let's talk about, Thomas, the coaching news that isn't news, but is news, but hasn't been officially made news yet. And that is the fact that Mauricio Pochettino is going to be named the next head coach of the U.S. men's national team. We basically know that negotiations are going on with U.S. Soccer and Poch. And unfortunately, as you know, and probably a lot of our listeners know, it's not like Cindy Parlow Cohn or Matt Crocker who can just say, "Okay, here's your contract." This does have to get approved by the U.S. Soccer Board and those people. It does also seem like there's some issues that he has to resolve with Chelsea. So, as much as we wanted this new manager in charge for the September window, we will probably have to wait until October, which is a little disappointing. But the exciting part is this Mauricio Pochettino.
yeah, it's it's frustrating. I mean, fan any fan over the last since 2017, as rightfully so, a little you know apprehensive about the whole situation, and you just really want to make sure that it happens. And I'm one of them. I really, I get a little nervous when things get delayed, and because he could easily just change his mind, right? And I think that's where I get nervous um, with the timing of it, right? And so I think it does say a lot about his commitment to continue holding on. I mean, obviously, we don't know any details about salary or those sorts of things. So, who knows what that is? Could be, very lucrative, but it is, I guess, positive that he remains committed, and hopefully an announcement this window can be made, because I think it would be just a nice little, cherry on top to kind of into not too many more windows until we get to 2026 World Cup. It's rapidly approaching.
Right. I think if you look at the negatives of this, it's absolutely that, as you mentioned, we have very few windows remaining until the next World Cup that we are hosting. And the September window is a lost one. Um, I'm not saying that these players needed to play Canada and New Zealand under Pochettino, but you would have liked to have seen him conducting a camp, beginning the installation of what his system will be. Whether that'll be as complicated as it has been, as complex as his systems may be at the club level, or if it's a simplified version of what he expects to play, we don't know because he's not here. But yeah, the positive is he is still in the running, if not still, negotiating. There's not another name listed for the manager search right now. He's not looking at other jobs. So it seems like the commitment and the agreement is there. It's just not signed. But this is a big step for U.S. soccer, and I think even a bigger hire than Klinsmann, even though Klinsmann himself was a World Cup winner and had previous international management experience with Germany. I think this is a bigger hire because Poch is a more proven manager, has had success building teams out of not having the most resources. I think that's fair to say. And a guy who is well respected within the coaching community. This will probably be the best potential hire the U.S. soccer men's national team has ever had. Obviously, we don't know how that'll translate, but this is a big get for Cindy Parlow-Cone, JT Batson, and Matt Crocker.
Yeah, it's people wanted different managers. People wanted different you know people with different resume and experience, and I think his resume is there. I think there's enough time to reflect in before being hired about what that expectation is and how he's going to meet that, because we know he can get the best out of a group of talent. We've seen him do that, you know, and I really feel that he probably would. I'm sure there's other options, but I think he's a fit. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see how the players respond to it. I mean, a lot of players' comments, you know, over the last 3 weeks since it was unofficially announced that it was going to happen, are kind of telling to me, because they're telling us that, oh, we needed this change. We need someone to, again, to kind of put us in our place type of thing. It's like, they almost kind of felt like they were controlled under Berhalter, to do whatever they wanted to once they got through
Mm.
2022. And so, like, that's telling to me, because they're all kind of saying the same message, and maybe it's scripted within the players, but to me, that's not the scripting you would necessarily want to say. Hey, we need to be led and all these other things. And so, I think it's a good sign. With that being said, these players need to produce, the coaching needs to produce, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. There's some windows here. We got some competitive matches in November for Nations League, where we could really put things together and hopefully see what his combinations are going to be in his
Mm.
formations.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point that November is Nations League, so he does get a window before that. And you and I both know that Nations League window will not be um, the most competitive, right? We saw yes, El Salvador, no, Trinidad, excuse me, Trinidad and Tobago last time around was not an easy tie by any stretch, mainly because Serginho Dest getting a red card, but it's not a heavyweight bout by any straight stretch of the imagination. It's a mid-tier CONCACAF opponent. Um, but that said, it is a good way to get him introduced to the competitive nature of this region and get the players introduced to his system in a competitive environment. Um, since he doesn't have a whole lot of time, my question, and this is where I've been trying to think of, Greg Berhalter, I think did a lot of good things with this group for the 2022 cycle. I think you and I both agree that he got what he could do the most of with this group, right? And it was just very clear we needed to move on. It was very clear almost immediately that we needed to move on from Greg Berhalter after he was rehired. Um, so what are those? What are a couple things you think just Pochettino being here does to elevate the program?
Well, I mean, it definitely, again, it gets I think it does a couple things. I think one, depending on how they decide to structure it, it gets the pressure on the manager. He's a
Mm,
big name, he's a big name manager, and it takes maybe some of the light off the players, right? Kind of
mhm.
when Klinsman was here, right? And in the beginning, I think he managed himself okay, and then his ego got out of control. And so this is a small window of time, and Punch can really take on that load of the potential, you know, face of U.S. soccer, face of the U.S. men's national team. In doing that, um, he can take some of the pressure off the players, when it comes to, um, anything that comes up, within the team. And he's experienced that at the highest level in the Premier League, so he knows what that is. He knows how to respond to that, and he's going to put a little bit of a show on, I'm sure, in terms of that. And he's going to bring new fans into it as well. And I think he's going to do that, because of his background and his success, in Europe. And I think that's important, right?
So do you
Then it's
think this validates the U.S. men's national team in the eyes of a lot of the kind of, I mean, for lack of a better term, Euro snobs? I'm not using that as a derogatory, but that type of fan here in the States, even.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's important to have that, and I think that's where this whole it takes us to another tier in terms of how the
Mm,
world looks at us, right? Like because I've got friends in South America, I've got friends over in Europe, and they have said they were shocked with how we did in 2022, and they thought Berhalter did an all right job,
yeah,
and then a couple years into it, they're like, "What the hell is he doing now?" Like he did so well and he showed well, but now he's screwing it up. And so
yeah,
like and so then it can change very quickly, right? Now it's like, well, they have the talent. What's going on? Why can't it be managed anymore? And so um again, that part of that second cycle management, piece of it. But I think this is very crucial to getting the most out of these players. They respect,
hmm
what he's done. They will respect what he's done, because he has been successful and he has coached some teams and coached them up. That's the thing, coach them up. And
he
this
coached him
this
up.
team, right? And this team needs that.
Yeah,
They need that to, you know what I mean? Because if if heaven forbid he can coach them up and they can get to the World Cup final, even if they lose, right? I mean, this guy will never have to buy a drink in the United States
right.
ever again, right? And that's what I've wanted for this cycle, right? For so many
hmm
reasons. And that's why it's critical to do this, because you're going to pull in a whole group of fans, you know, if they can show well, right? If they
hmm
can redeem themselves from a Copa America and now say, wow, they are, you know, a nation that is here and
hmm
here to stay. And then at that point, then you can get the next tier of better managers
hmm
and going forward. So I think it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I'm excited for it. While I'm still nervous about how it's all come to play, because I think he really needs to keep it simple. He has such a
Yeah, I
small
do
window of
too.
time. Keep it simple. Like you want to use a formation, whatever, but he's got to get a feel for the players.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's been watching a ton of video, but over the last 3 weeks, but who knows?
Well, I mean, the reality is a lot of these guys he's had to scout in some way, shape, or form as a European manager, having to scout them for competitions. I don't think they've necessarily crossed paths, but one of those, like you just watch them, they're on your radar. But I think something that immediately this hire and Poch can bring to the team is the standard raises. And I think we saw under Berhalter, not that the guys didn't respect him, but they felt comfortable underneath him. And for some reason, he was not able to hold them as accountable as they needed to be held. And that allowed the level to slip in important moments. and the focus to slip in important moments. And, I know it's not as simple as he shouts at them a little bit more or he gets angrier, but he's going to just hold them to a different standard, a higher standard, and expect them to conduct themselves in the most professional manner. I'm not sure that Greg Berhalter wasn't doing that, but it's just a matter of you're playing for a guy who has coached the best. I mean, literally, he's coached some of the best players in the world. Um, and that means he has a different expectation of what his players can and will do. Now, on the flip side, I think he's going to have to downgrade his expectations a little bit, as what happens when you go from a club to an international management position. Again, that's probably the really only negative I can say about him from a coaching standpoint is he doesn't have international management coaching experience, but he did play for Argentina, so he knows what it's like. But it's not like you can say, oh well, I'm not getting what I want out of my left back, so now I got to go find another one in the transfer market. He will have to make what he has better, right? He'll have to coach these players up. But I do feel confident he can do that. Um, but I think just that immediate standard being increased, being the level of expectation increasing is something that these guys need. And I think they're up for it. I mean, we've got guys playing at top clubs. Um, they know what it's like to play up to a standard, and now they're going to be held to that.
Well, and that's the thing. Like they have someone that's done it, right? It's not like, again, I think the relationship with the coach and fan, it flipped. It went from, because Berhalter was tough at times. He made decisions that people didn't like about Pulisic against
Yeah,
Canada, pulling him off and all these different things. And I think, you know, after they kind of succeeded, I guess, in the eyes of, U.S. soccer or whatever it was at the World Cup, it kind of was easy street a little bit, right? Everyone
it
was kind of.
almost felt like, okay, we got to this level, we're here, and it was like there was no going down from there. Even though it's like, well, no, you have to maintain this level. It was like, okay, we've. It was almost like a video game. Like, okay, cool, we got to level 7. Now we're working on level 8. And the reality is, you have to continually work to stay at that level and get better. And Berhalter didn't really see that.
Yeah, I just don't think he could. I don't think he had the IQ to do it. I mean, soccer
Maybe,
IQ. I just don't think he did. I don't
yeah,
think he knew what to do next. Like I think
yeah,
he was able to get to the certain point and say, okay, here we are. But then he just didn't have the playbook. He just didn't have
yeah,
the intelligence or the experience. Whatever you wanted to list it, he just didn't have it. And I think that's where Ponch is going to be able to just bring a new light to it. Again, going back, it's fresh thing. It's going to keep these players on their toes too,
yeah,
right? I mean, we're going to go through the roster. I don't think there's any real surprises based on certain things, on this. There's some nice things, but I think, it's going to make players think, oh, geez, I want to play in the World Cup at home, right? This is it. It's 30 years since the last time we played on home soil. Is it going to be another 30 years, you know, till it happens again? So this is it for these players. They want to play on home soil. So you better be ready to do that. Get your bodies conditioned, ready, and fit. And avoid injury to do it. And I'm calling out Weston McKennie because
yeah,
he's the one to me that just he's a very important part of this team, but he has to be mentally and physically fit to produce
yeah.
at that high level.
Um, you mentioned on Twitter, follow him at USKeeper, about Poch needs to focus on building the depth and getting the most out of the current USMNT player pool while looking for as many quality dual nationals as possible. Um, there are a few, and we'll talk about one specifically in this roster. But I think I'm going to push back a little bit and just say that I think there are some dual nats that could really help us, but I don't really think that there's to my knowledge now, I'm not going through the 23andMe and Ancestry.com listings here, but there's one or two that absolutely he should go out and try to recruit, and that will make us better. But I think your point of how do you build the depth, and that's my question: is how do we build that depth? Because it can't just be, oh, bring more players into camp. Because as you and I have talked about, that sounds great, but the reality is every player you bring into camp is more money, and also it just changes the algebra of how you're running, training sessions and everything. So how does he help build that depth behind the 15 guys that we think are the starters plus first off the bench?
Well, I think bringing the players in and seeing how they work with one another. I mean, Wiley is a
Mm,
good example. He's on this roster. I think he's made a move to Europe. He's 19, right? He's on that fringe of saying, "Hey, does he have it? Can he help and contribute, to this team, right?" Like you look at again, I always go back to '02 with Beasley and Donovan, right? Those players came in, 2 years ish, right, before the '02 World Cup, and then both of them became very critical pieces to that World Cup. So he's got to be able to try to identify that by bringing those players into camp and to see what they can do, um, with that core group, where they fit, can they be dynamic, can they come and do those things, and can they fill in? Because you know, our depth is not great, but part of that is that Berhalter just got used to using the same guys. Like, you know, he's Berhalter almost to a fault. Like, didn't bring the guys in too early when he started. Thank you, Nick Lima, and then he relied on too much now, and didn't bring in other players. So we're past, this is where you start looking at those players. So
yeah,
Berhalter should have been doing it if he was still here, and Pochettino needs to be doing that too when he looks at where these holes are. Center back, huge, right? Some young center backs, be careful. Goalkeeper, look, there's some great young goalkeepers out there, but I'm sorry, they're all playing in the third division. Stop
yeah.
it.
Not a single
Stop
one
it.
of them are, in my opinion, ready to take over
Right. Like,
Ben Horvath
stop
and
it with
Matt
that. I,
Turner.
I would love it, but stop it. Then, I mean,
Yeah,
you know, fine, cap tie him, bring him in, third keeper, make that a destination. But you've got to find those combinations. You've got to
yeah.
give them opportunities to play, um, and even in some meaningful matches, right? Like you've got to take those chances, and hopefully now we'll see expanded rosters to 26 for tournaments. Then maybe these players will get, their Gold Cup. I don't know what that's going to look like because it keeps getting jumped around, but that is a tournament that you can try to get, you know, as a showcase for some of those 23rd,
Yeah.
24th, 25th type players on the rosters.
Well, let's switch gears and talk about the roster. How about that?
Let's do it.
Um, as I said, the Poch news is at this point it can only be talked about as a rumor because he hasn't been officially there. But I think we all know that it's going to happen. Um, as you and I both expressed, we'd love for it to happen like before this window starts, so that maybe he could be introduced. Maybe that Tuesday night game in Cincinnati. That would be kind of cool, right? If Poch is introduced during that game. But we have 24 players on a roster that Mikey Varas, the U20 coach, has put together. Um, I don't think there's any indication that anyone other than Mikey and Matt Crocker put together this roster. So I do just want to put that out there beforehand. And I think it's also worth noting that there are several guys on this roster who are first teamers, starters, probably, but are either A, hurt, or B, kind of in that camp of like, hey, bud, just take a rest. This is not an important time for you to be with this national team. So, with that said, let's run through the position groups. Goalkeepers: Ethan Horvath from Cardiff City, Diego Koken from FC Barcelona, Patrick Schulte from Columbus Crew, and Matt Turner from Crystal Palace. Schulte has a cap. He got that back in the January window for this group. But Diego Koken, the new guy playing at Barcelona uh, on the second team there, been in that youth academy, or that youth system for a number of years, is probably the marquee name that people like got really excited about when this roster dropped. Should we be excited, or should we just go, "Oh, that's cool," because we're probably not going to see him actually play?
I mean, I think I feel both on that. I think it's cool. I think I mean, look, I love a good goalkeeper, but and I actually, to plug an article I wrote about the goalkeepers, kind of break down the whole piece of it a little bit, what our options are, and kind of the history a little bit of like what it takes. Again, goalkeepers, their careers, primes are very different, right? Right now Turner and Horvath are kind of there, and and potentially they could be there in 2030. And I know people aren't going to want to hear that, but that is a possibility that a 36-year-old goalkeeper is going to start in a World Cup game. That's not far fetched at all. And so um, to see him, he's 18 years old. I just, it'd be great if he got some time in there, but I don't see it happening. I think it's great to bring him into camp, see the culture, be involved in the team, kind of see what it is. I think that's great for dual nationals, right? They need to do more of that with ones that are willing to accept that invitation to camp and just get them a taste of what it is. Because I don't know. I know he's played at a couple levels of the youth levels for the U.S. But what, U17, U19, maybe, I don't remember, maybe U20. But either way, he is, still internationally been with the U.S. And to kind of
Yeah, I
come with
mean,
a
he's
national
ours,
team, yeah, yeah, to come with a
for lack
national
of a
team,
better
just
term.
right to come to the national team to be with some big names is a great opportunity and a great experience for him. So yeah, I'm excited for it. That being said, I don't expect we'll see much from him in this window, but who knows? It's these are what friendlies are for too. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy to watch in the future. I don't think he'll be playing much now. Granted, that could completely change. Again, none of this matters. I mean, it kind of matters to me that we beat Canada, but doesn't really matter. The other guy that I do want to talk about is Patrick Schulte. 23-year-old got all the minutes in the Olympics. Whether I liked that or not is another story. But it seems like U.S. Soccer has identified Schulte as the next goalkeeper to kind of build up and maybe, again, not take anyone's place. I don't think he's at that level yet. But at 23, he is starting to get to that age where he should start showing actual signs of being able to be an international caliber goalkeeper. Obviously, with Columbus Crew, he has played in a lot of high profile matches, which to me was the reason he started more over or played over Slonina. Is no offense to Slonina, but his teams have not been very good, and he hasn't necessarily played a whole lot of meaningful matches outside of just maybe a rivalry and club match, whereas Schulte has played in a CONCACAF Champions Cup final, an MLS Cup final. He just played in a Leagues Cup final. I'm not saying I'm all in on Schulte, but I am kind of all in on the idea of this 23-year-old young goalkeeper who's winning a lot of trophies at club level. Let's get him into the mix,
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's the proper timing, the proper progression. Again, he may just, it may not amount to anything. We've seen it again. We've seen this happen with certain keepers. He could be a third keeper for his whole career with a national team, or he could flame out and just not get the opportunities. But I think he's he's getting the time. He's it's the next progression step for him to see how he looks. Now he could play very, in one of these in matches. I don't, again, it all depends on what they're trying to accomplish in this window. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I do, and again, this is where he needs to make a career change if he's looking at the national team and say, look, what's going to give me the best chance to do that? Is going to Europe going to do that? Because again, for Matt Turner, he'd be better off playing the MLS right now than sitting on the bench for Crystal Palace. But I think that's the life of a goalkeeper, right? Either you have too many good ones or not enough good ones, right? And so he's going to have to just make that decision because he's having a pretty solid year for Columbus for sure. I think he has 9 shutouts through all competitions, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I think people can bemoan the fact that Gaga Slonina has not really been given a fair look, if you will, from U.S. Soccer, but just we don't see training, and as you and I both know, there's more to goalkeeping than just stopping shots. And Patrick Schulte maybe has some of those. I don't want to call them intangibles because they do matter as a goalkeeper, but just goalkeeping skills. Which, by the way, I think Schulte and Slonina are there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. Sorry to burst some of these people's bubbles, but playing in big time matches, getting the trust of a coach who a lot of people revere, leading or at least being the backbone of a team that is winning so much in MLS. To me, that means a lot, and I'm glad Schulte's kind of getting put into the position to learn from Turner and Horvath and continue to be part of the men's national team pool. His time in the youth is done, right? That's the other thing that we've talked about. The progression, a linear progression, if you can. He's done with youth national teams. He just played in the Olympics. He's 23. Can't do it anymore. So get him into the senior national team, see what he can produce.
Yeah, it'll be to see how it pans out because we don't have a lot of time between now and the World Cup. So, and I'm sure there's a handful or more than that yelling and saying, "Well, we need to bring in Chris Brady. We need to bring in Gaga Slanina. They need to be the third keeper, or they need to be the first keeper. I don't know, but there are a group of fans that believe that Turner and Horvath aren't going to cut it, and I get it. I don't fully disagree, but I also say, well, what we still have to be playing at higher levels of you know of you know competition. Third division is not it, and that's where Gaga is playing right
Yeah.
now. And so, and he hasn't wowed me. And again, to be very clear, and I haven't seen it personally, but no keeper in this pool right now can play with their feet. So you can say all day you want about Turner not playing with his feet. Supposedly, coaching can do that at a higher level,
Yeah.
but again, he's 18, so
Yeah.
you're not going to throw an 18-year-old or 20-year-old, whatever, in is your starting World Cup. It's not Tony Miola. It's not
Yeah.
1990, right? Like you're not going to do that.
Right. And I mean, that's going to be a question that you're also going to have to ask of the new head coach is how much do you want your goalkeeper to be playing with their feet, excuse me. I don't think that was really asked a lot of from Turner, but it was asked enough to where we had to talk about it. That's also just the modern game now. Your goalkeepers are going to have to distribute in some capacity. Um, I do want to kind of wrap up the goalkeeper talk and just saying that, like, yes, I understand that Horvath and um, Turner aren't necessarily in club positions we love, but I don't think there's any doubt that they're the two best options we have. Um, and that's just the unfortunate reality of where we are right now. Moving on to defenders. Austin Trusty, fresh off a move to Celtic. Marlon Fossey from Standard Liège in Belgium. Christopher Lund at Palermo, recently promoted to Serie A, I believe. Mark McKenzie at Toulouse, another new transfer. Tim Ream transferring to Charlotte FC. Chris Richards at Crystal Palace, Joe Scally at Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Caleb Wiley on his move to Chelsea then Strasbourg. Um, you're going to probably notice that there's no Jedi. That's a big one. Obviously, Sergino Dest still injured. So that leaves some fun competition during this window for left back and right back.
Yeah, look, Jedi's healthy. He's there, and that's been clear. He's played the position. Who's the backup? I'm not convinced on Lund. I'm just not. He hasn't had a great amount of opportunity to play with the national team, so this gives him an opportunity. And you have, Wiley, who I'm excited to see, and he didn't make the roster, but John Tolkien is, nipping at
Yeah,
the heels of it a little bit too. So that's a good thing, and it's important to see that. And as far as the right back goes, I want to see Fossey out there. He's been a player that has been producing for a while. Um, and he got what, one or two call-ins, never has yet to get capped, I believe.
right.
So I think this is a good opportunity for him. We know what Joe Scally is, right? Like it's fine. He's good to have there, but you have to have a match. And I would almost prefer, I don't know which match, I really don't care what match it is actually, but I want to see these players in there. It does, against New Zealand, should be able to roll out just about any players on this squad and go ahead and get a winning result, right? And so I think that's critical in this, and that's why we're doing this. We're not doing this to see, Joe Scally again, right? Like we know what Joe Scally offers, and but we don't know what Fosse offers. He's 25
Right.
years old. He's in a he's at an age and at a league level that he's playing pretty consistently every week. I want to see it. Wiley may be a different conversation. He's 19, so maybe you give him a half or something. One of these matches or both of the matches for that said. But
Yeah.
you have to tinker around, with all these pieces. I don't want to see Richard Dream. We've seen Richard Dream, right? I
Mhm.
want to see Richards with McKenzie or Trusty, right? I want to see that grouping work together and see because that was a very big weakness at the goal. I mean, at the
Yeah.
Copa America, the defense didn't look great. They looked disjointed at times, and it's again, I keep saying, but that's what these windows are for. That's what you have to do is go ahead and experiment. It's okay to
Yes.
not have pretty soccer. You have to. These are the small opportunities you have to go and play, and they've got the right players in there, right? I really believe they do. Um, except for Reem, again, I think he's still very good, but I think we're already seeing his decline. And now that he's not going to be playing at a higher level in Europe, I think it's going to slowly or maybe quickly be evident, right? At
Yeah.
36 years old, soon to be 37 years old, you know, with the return to MLS. So
I do want to say about Reem, I think him moving back to MLS is a good thing for the U.S. men's national team and U.S. soccer as a whole because he is a guy who established himself in Europe, was a very good player for Fulham for a number of years, as well as, when he finally got back into the mix, U.S. men's national team. He's at the age where moving back to MLS makes a whole lot of sense. And I think that can improve his team and hopefully show MLS defenders how to play a more, if you will, enlightened center back style. Um, but I'm with you. Let's move on. We need to see Trusty and McKenzie, guys who didn't get looks, by the way, in Copa America. Let's see them in this window. Um, a couple thoughts on Marlon Fossey as well. He's been at Liège for 3 years. He's been a consistent starter for them. At this age, at 25, he's kind of that perfect, as you like to call that gap player, right? Where um, maybe this is his only real window of opportunity to make the team as a backup right back. Um, you know, even if it's just being in the mix, because who knows if Dest or Scally will be healthy come 2026. Obviously, we want that, but injuries happen. This is a great opportunity for him. And there are some other younger right backs that show a lot of promise, but none of them have been able to consistently do it in a decent league in Belgium. And so I do want to see at least 60 minutes from Fossey in this window. I'd love to see a full 90 in one game, or at least 45 in one game. Um, and I hope we get to see that also on the left side because both Wiley and Lund have something to possibly show, especially with Mikey Varas, who has coached Wiley. Maybe we'll see, a little bit more balance in the minutes given to those guys.
yeah, it's critical to do that. I mean, these guys have kind of been on the fringes for a while. To your point, with right back, I think Brian Reynolds is a name that could have been called in to this camp as well. I think he's a player that's up and coming on the younger side, but I think he'll have his opportunities here to do that as well. And then other one I'll mention that again it's more recency bias, but Rich Ledesma, he's been playing right back for his club over in Europe, PSV I believe, and he's doing it very well. So he's a player that many had mentioned as maybe an option to call him this roster. But either way, whoever's in here, they need to be given an opportunity to again, I think start the match and get out there and 60 minutes to your point, right? That's a good number. Get out there, give them those opportunities. You rotate the experience with Scally and Lund or whatever to with Wiley and Bossy, however you want to do that, and just get that combination out there so they can, have that real quality look.
Hey y'all, it's Bart jumping in with a brief post-edit comment. We recorded this episode on Wednesday night, the night before the morning that we learned that Gio Reyna would be departing camp with a groin strain, so he is not part of this team for this window. Unfortunately, we talked a lot about him in this particular segment, so forget all of that and pretend like we said something really smart that you agree with. Well, let's move up the field to the midfielders because this is also a position group missing a couple players. First off, let's just say Tyler Adams not here, Weston McKennie not here. So that does open up some potential. Well, it does one or two things, and we'll talk about those players. So Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis, Luca de la Torre from Celta Vigo, Aiden Morris from Middlesbrough, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund, somehow still there, and Malik Tillman, from Eindhoven. So let's talk about that. I think let's address the McKennie absence first. I think it's a no doubt that Gio is probably going to be a starter. He was a starter during Gold Cup or during Copa America. He was starting in Nations League, all these things. I think it's very clear that Gio Reyna is a starter for the U.S. men's national team. Now, if he doesn't start both games, I'm not going to throw a fit because it's whatever. But who do you think benefits from McKennie not being there? Is it Musa or Tillman or Luca de la Torre?
De la Torre is, I may be wrong in that. I think he's just coming off injury. I don't know if he's even played.
I was a little shocked he was fully involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, but whatever. I want Luca to continue to develop because we need some midfield backup. But yeah, I mean, McKennie's not there, so someone's going to have to take those minutes.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see, if I was picking the midfield, I'm hoping to see maybe a Johnny Musa Reyna type of mid, in one of the matches, right? I want to see how that combination. I want to see Johnny in there, and I think because he's just been doing so well with his club, I want to see him get more minutes with this group. But Tillman would be an interesting one to throw in there as well to see, to have two real attacking midfielders.
I would love to see Gio and Tillman together. Like honestly, give me Malik and Gio together, like YOLO. Let's just go score some goals.
Yeah, because Tillman's been doing so well. I mean, and so I think he's really earned that start as well. So it really depends how they line up, but I think any one of those combinations are going to be good. But to see Tillman, partnered with another, dynamic midfielder like Reyna, I think would be fun to watch in either of these matches.
You mentioned Johnny, obviously without Tyler Adams. Johnny kind of established himself, rightfully so, as the backup 6. No Tyler Adams at all this camp. Is this a time where you just give all the minutes to Johnny that you can? I mean, within reason, it's still Friendlies. You don't want to run him out there 180 minutes. But is this hey, give him as many minutes as possible in this camp?
I think you have to. I mean, he continues chipping away. We see signs of it, even with the national team now. It's okay, he's here. Let's give him those minutes. Let's see what he can do with this group, with these surrounding talents of players, because you have to see it now, because you can't. I'm sorry, I don't think you can rely on Adams anymore. To me, he's becoming unreliable in terms of his health, and it's concerning to me because I actually, he's, again, I've said it before, but he's the John O'Brien of this of this era. He's a great when he's healthy, but geez, he's not healthy enough, right? And I think that's the problem. He's just not healthy. He can't be relied on. And
we definitely don't know that he'll even be around for Nations League in November. That's my big. The immediate is, will he be healthy for that?
I'm not even counting.
That matters,
Yeah, I'm not even counting. I'm saying we'll see in March. Best.
Yeah,
case.
I mean,
we'll
100%.
Like there's no, in my opinion, there's no point in rushing him back to the national team.
No.
Take these windows, try different things, and when they matter. So Johnny's
So he's
it,
going to get called up
Moose is
to
it,
Camp Cupcake in January. Got it. Okay.
right? You know what I mean? So like that's my thought on that. And he's got to get those. He's got to get those minutes. He's got to get those touches.
Do you think it's worth? Because Aiden has started the championship very well. I think that needs to be like very much said. He has looked and produced a lot, so that's good. He's looked good and produced. But is it worth giving him a significant portion? I don't mean 10 minutes at the end of a match. I'm talking like, oh yeah, Johnny, you go 68 against 30. Because I would rather just give Johnny 80 minutes a match, you know?
Yeah, I think you need to, because I'd have to go back and look at his numbers on that, because he's just not, his 15 caps or whatever it is minimal in terms of the minutes he's done that.
Yeah,
I
he's
would
got
be
Johnny.
shocked.
Johnny's got 15 caps, but it just feels like all of them have been like
Yeah, like
sub minutes.
subbed in, like maybe started and came out at halftime. Like I'd have to look at his if I can find it real quick. Um, national team minutes, because it's not a lot. You know what I mean? And I think
Right.
it's important to see him in that, in these moments over these next 3 windows. I think if he's healthy, he's in camp, then he needs to be. Of the 15 caps, he's played less than 500 minutes. Right, so that's
Not a lot of minutes at all per
right.
appearance. And yeah, I think at this point we need to see
I mean,
him.
that's like 33 minutes a match, right? Like that's
Yeah,
that's
and
not.
that's including
I mean,
matches that he may have
that's
started. Yeah.
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 So
Okay,
that's
so we
not a
agree.
lot for him.
Play him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, I think this midfield group, I feel confident in all 6 of these guys called up, right? Even if Aiden plays a little bit, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I think he can do a job. He's the one I'm least excited to see, but I'm also a little intrigued to see how. I feel like the last time we saw him was in some not good performances, so I am curious to see if he has truly taken a step up now that he's in the championship.
Yeah, because the last time I remember seeing him was in that Gold Cup, and then he left.
Right.
And wasn't and he couldn't be replaced. And I don't really remember. I don't think it ever came out of the circumstances of why he left, because he was a Canadian dual national, and he did get his cap tied at that Gold Cup. So, and I don't know if he's played with him since, but if it was probably at Camp Cupcake. But he
he
has
did
shown
get
well.
that. He did get that friendly, I believe, back in.
Was it the one in January?
January. Yeah, he did.
Slovenia. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been the last time before the Gold Cup, because I think yeah, he's shown well. I'm impressed with him. I love the move for him. This is kind of what I see for players in the MLS. The move he made,
Mm-hmm.
the timing, in his career where he made it, to just give him that push. Can I do it? Can I make it? So far, he's looked good, and I think he's definitely earned the call in this window. So I expect to see him a little bit. As to your point, 10 to 15 minutes a match.
All right, let's look at the forwards. 6 of those guys called up. Brendan Aronson back at Leeds United, Valerian Balogun with Monaco, Ricardo Pepi from PSV Eindhoven, Christian Pulisic from AC Milan, Josh Sargent with Norwich City, and Haji Wright with Coventry City. Now, that's a lot of strikers, 2 wingers, maybe 3 if you count Brendo, or 3 if you count Haji. I am curious how this plays out, because we don't have Tim Weah. He's hurt. We don't have any other, what I would call natural wingers, besides Pulisic and Haji. This is an interesting group. I am very curious how these things will play out. Let's just put it that way. I would like to see Haji start on the left and Pulisic start on the right. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that would be a preferential you know three attackers on the front there. And I mean, I think the other option that you could look to, only because you have so many strikers in this pool, but I don't who's running it. Would you do two strikers up top? We've seen it before. Hasn't been overly successful. Um, but and maybe tuck Pulisic in underneath him there, attacking midfielder, and then you know who knows on the on the midfield piece of it. But I think I think that's probably what we'll see. I'll see
Mhm.
Haji on the left, Pulisic on the right.
Balogun starting up top. I mean, I feel like we need to kind of run with him as the starter, but I'm also in the mood of to see if everyone can prove it. But I think he had a really good Copa America.
He did. He looked good. He's struggling with his club right now. I'm,
He
I'm
is.
I've always loved Jar Sargent forever. Forever. Ever since he played in those two World Cups as a 17-year-old, the U7 and the U17 and the U20 in the same calendar year. And he's doing quite well with his club, I think. And he's healthy. Knock on wood this window.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
Right.
we're in camp, but good Lord, stay healthy through this window,
Yeah.
please.
Right. You know what I mean? Like maybe he earns a start, in my opinion.
Look, 2 goals and assists already in 4 matches this year for Norwich. He had 16 goals last year in 30 matches in 2022-23, 13 goals in 41 matches. I mean, we know he can put the ball in the back of the net. We just haven't been able to see it for the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, it's just that again, he's been unlucky too with his health, and I think that's um, so I guess I don't know, I just kind of want to see him out there to see what he can do again
Would
with
you
this group.
split the starts?
I
Like
think
give
you
Balogun
should.
one, give
I
Sargent
think
one?
you should. I think you can have a core group of I don't know. In this case, I think you might have only a core group of like 5 players,
5,
maybe
yeah.
6 players that start both matches, and then you piece the players around them.
I'm
Right?
looking at like Pulisic, Gio,
Right. Yeah. Johnny
Johnny,
Richards.
Richards,
Yeah.
and then probably Turner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think Balogun is still my number one. It's just more about, as we kind of talked about with Johnny, is giving Josh minutes back with the national team that he's missed because of his injuries. But also, like, if Balogun starts and Josh is coming off the bench at 60, 70 minutes, that works for me too. I just would like to see him get more minutes with the national team because I want to see if he can take what he's done with his club, which is score a boatload of goals, and do that in a U.S. shirt again.
Right. And I think the one thing again, we've heard a lot of rumors that Ponch is at camp, which it has not been confirmed, and he's very involved in camp and going to be very involved in all these things. Right? We don't. It's all rumor. We don't have any confirmation of that. But if that's the case, and he is, playing a role, behind the scenes, then I think that has to be considered in the conversation in terms of who plays where and how they do that, because I would assume he's going to want to run a formation out there that fits his style of play or his vision for the national team, and so he's going to probably want to see
Yeah.
players in those positions, and maybe in both matches. Again, to your point, I think you have to split it up.
Yeah, I think the other thing you're legitimately concerned about this window, and this is why FIFA eliminated this window for the women, by the way. They did not for the men. I don't really see too much value in this window, but whatever. A lot of these guys are also getting kind of they need to get back to fitness / they need to be rested a little bit so they can go back to their club teams and like continue to play the season. So a lot of this is just split the minutes so that guys can go back to their club teams not dead tired, you know?
Right. And so, and to that point, I believe I may have the timing wrong on this, but I believe in the 2030 cycle, they're going to push back this window until mid to later September, and it's actually going to make
Yes.
it a double window. It's going to be 4
Yes.
matches in a, it's going to have a September, late and an early October. So they got four match window. So they're going to eliminate essentially the October window come 2027. I think is
Yeah.
what I had
Which
seen.
to me makes sense. I think the early September is the problem with this window, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's
most
too
of these
soon.
it's too soon. The women would have played in late September. That's usually how this worked. They were, a couple weeks into the month. That probably works. I love the idea of the double window, because I think I would rather see fewer windows but longer windows for the international game to allow teams to actually coach, come together, and also it does give them a little bit of a break from their club teams that a lot of these guys have been asking for as well. So if you're
Yeah,
playing four games over 3 weeks, that's not a whole lot of time off from your club team, but it's also enough time to kind of rest, recuperate, get re-energized, and then go back to club and feel better about yourself.
yeah. These are small windows. I mean, they're 9 days. I think it's not and depending on when the players get over there and what they can get done. I love the concept of a longer window. I think it helps any national team build the continuity, build to put things more in play, have 4 matches or whatever it is. Because some of these windows, I think the women did they schedule? I think what's it, the October window?
Yeah,
Didn't they drop
yeah,
a
they
third
scheduled
friendly in
3
there?
in that October window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That
Which
third
I
one is
love. I
against
mean, I love it.
Iceland
Like,
or excuse me, third one is against
yeah.
Argentina in Louisville. So excited to see major U.S. soccer team
Oh,
going to Kentucky, playing in a
yeah.
beautiful stadium that I passed twice on the interstate going up to Indiana this Labor Day weekend. Which one I think is really really cool that you can see an actual soccer stadium from the interstate in a mid-major city. That's
It
cool.
looks like a beautiful stadium. I mean, it really does. Yeah.
I got to walk around it during COVID. I drove up to my cousins in Illinois and wasn't open because no one was soccering at that point in time, and I got to walk around it. It was really pretty. Um,
Yes.
let's just wrap up this U.S. men's national team talk real quick. Obviously, we play Canada on September 7th and then New Zealand on the 10th. How much on a scale of 1 to 9? Um, how badly do you want to beat Jesse Marsh in this friendly?
I want 4 or 5-0. I just
Yeah.
want
Is it Jesse Marsh or is it Canada that you want to beat so badly? Because
it's really both because it's both for it's two there's two different motives behind it. Right? Canada, the cheating bastards like videoing and saying they're all the best and whatever. It's like I'm not sure what advantage you get from that, but like to me, like that frustrates me. And it didn't seem like the men really got any penalty from this, unlike the
when
women.
they were doing it, if not before, more than the women. Yeah.
Right. So like and Marsh a little bit. Marsh has always rubbed me the wrong way as a player, as a coach. Like I appreciate his candor and I appreciate a lot of the stuff he's done, but like to me, I just he's rubbed me the wrong way. I just it would have been so much sweeter if Ponch was the coach in that. But if Mikey Vargas can get that result either way would be pretty nice because I think Canada's a little getting a little too big for their britches for some reason. I think they kind of um, so we'll see. I mean, I think I think they're riding high, finishing 4th at Copa America, but in reality, if you actually look at the numbers, they really didn't perform you know all that great to get to that finish.
Yeah. I just want to beat them because same reason I always want to beat Mexico. Yeah, I want to pretend to be our rivals and be ready to get smoked when we play you.
Right.
You know.
And
Um,
they should beat them. I mean, they really
yeah.
should.
They should.
I mean,
Our best is better than their best.
yeah.
That's legit. All right. Well, I don't have anything left to say about this roster. We will talk to y'all after these friendlies. I hope that I am in a better voice and better nasal passages. Thomas, thanks for joining me. Anything left that you need to plug?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, I'm
You can go
excited to
check
see
out
the
his
matches.
writing at chasingacup.com. So there's that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I've got a goalie one out there. I did just about that, and yeah, I'm not sure what my next piece is. I haven't had nothing come to me yet, but it's if anyone has any recommendations on something, just the research takes a long time to put together, but it's fun to do it.
All right. Well, again, follow him on Twitter at USKeeper. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.